guy bothered me, then got into a car accident. So basically I was just sitting in my car waiting for my food to get ready with my brother when I see a guy pull up with this car backing up to park in front of me. He backed up so fast where he almost hit my car. So me and my brother honked at him and we're like, yo, like, watch out, you're about to hit the car. And he gets out of the car and he's like, I have eyes, I can see. Like, okay, you have eyes, but clearly you can't use them. So he goes inside the store to pick up his cake and my brother goes inside to pick up our food. And by the time he comes back out, my brother's not back out yet. And I wanted to honk at him and be like, next time watch what you say. But he left, and then my brother came out right when he left and he was at the light. And I was like, listen, we're gonna go catch this guy and I'm gonna like beat him up. I mean, I really couldn't beat him up, but I just wanted to follow him, like give him the finger or whatever. So I'm driving and I feel like I lost him and I didn't find him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And then I found him. I saw his car and I went after him, but like for part 2. Story time about how a guy bothered me, then got into a car accident. So basically I was just sitting in my car waiting for my food to get ready with my brother when I see.
This is the story of the time that I got caught shoplifting. So I was friends with this girl, I think it was my freshman year of high school. And one day we decided that we wanted to go to the mall after school. So her mom picked us up and my friend had decided to take out all of her books out of her book bag and just bring her empty bag. I don't remember talking about it like before we got there, but we were talking about how earlier that day in one of our classes, this kid that we were friends with was talking about how he finessed a backpack right from Kohl's and nobody even noticed. So we were like, wow, is it really that easy? Like, let's do it. So we go into JCPenney and we start taking a bunch of clothes into the dressing rooms. We took off the tags and put them in her bag. As she was leaving, she decided she wanted to finesse a new purse. So she was like, here, take my bag and then I'm gonna take a new one. So then we literally stand in the middle of JCPenney and we start praying that we don't get caught, like for part 2. This is part 2 of being followed home from work. I want to give you guys an image of what this guy looks like, because based off his looks, I was not expecting him to be a creep. He looked like he could have been in his mid-20s, maybe even early 30s. He was over 6 feet tall, covered in tattoos, and overall a pretty attractive guy. So that's why I really wasn't expecting this to happen. So after he asked me for my number, I was like, no, I have a boyfriend. I'm actually on the phone with him right now. And he was like, oh, okay, that's all right. And gave me like a really weird, awkward side hug. I pulled away because I obviously wasn't expecting that from a complete stranger. So then I go in my car and I kind of look through my rearview mirror to see where he was like walking to. And he walked into his car. And I sat in my car for about 15 minutes. I didn't really think anything of it once I saw him get in his car because I figured he was going to leave right away. Then when I was about to leave, I look in my rearview mirror again and there he was sitting in his car. So I started backing out of my parking spot, and the second I did, he did too. And I was like, oh, hell no. So then I went back in my parking spot, and he went to like the first stop sign before you leave the restaurant. And then he waited for me to get behind him to go on the main road, like for part 3. This is part 2 of being followed home from work. I want to give you guys an image of what this guy looks like, because based off
Every day on my way to work, I stop and get myself an iced matcha latte from Dunkin'. I usually get it with light ice because I don't like when it gets all watery, and it usually takes me like half the day at work to drink it. So this day, they filled it totally top to bottom with ice, and I went to scoop some of it out so it didn't get all watery and gross. This is how much matcha was actually in my cup. I hadn't even taken a drink yet. This is all the ice, so I decided to go and get another one. On my way there, just getting into my car, I broke 2 of my nails. This is the bloody mess. And then once I got my new drink, it flew across my car, spilled all over my passenger floor seat. I had to stop and get my car detailed. Yep, that's how my day. Every day on my way to work,
This girl literally lived a nightmare. A 17-year-old girl was watching TV late at night when her motion detector lights in her driveway suddenly went on. She assumed it was just an animal, so she got up, drew the blinds, and went back to watching TV. Then a little bit later, it happened again. Before she could even react, she looks over and clearly makes out a silhouette of a person right behind the blinds who starts banging aggressively on the window. The girl stands up and goes, "I'm gonna call the cops!" And the figure stops for just a second, sprints to the side door and starts pounding even louder on that, screaming incoherently. The girl runs to the bathroom, barricades herself inside while she waits for the police, and then her worst nightmares come true. She hears glass shatter in the other room. After a few minutes of silence, she opens her door just a crack to get a peek outside, and standing in her living room next to a broken window is some crazy old woman who looks over at her and starts sprinting toward her. The lady comes smashing into the door and starts wailing on it until the police arrive and take her away. She was a lunatic who had escaped her facility. This girl
Story time on the time me and my brother almost got kidnapped and we were 10 years old. So throwback to like 9 years ago, I was 10 years old and so was my brother. Me and him decided to go play tennis at our local park. But the day that we decided to go, it was raining and it was like so gloomy out where nobody would be at the park. So of course me and him were like, we need to go to the park and we need to go play tennis. So our park was like 3 blocks away and we usually walk there. And as we're walking there, before we're about to enter the park, I see like a guy with a bicycle like eyeing us down across the street. So I told my brother, I was like, yo, this guy looks creepy as heck. But we like ignored it and we just continued to go to the park. And as we go inside, this guy follows us. Go to part 2. Story time on the time me and my brother.
This boy lied about his age just to date me. Story time. So back when my cute self was a senior in high school, there was this new girl that came to our school. Long story short, me and her ended up becoming super close. I went to her house, spent the night. Her family loved me. I mean, why wouldn't they? Anyways, she had a brother. We're gonna call him Binky. Me and Binky got pretty close. Now I want you guys to keep in mind, Binky didn't go to my school because their parents were divorced. So the sister who I was friends with lived with her mom, and Binky lived with his dad who lived in another city. But sometimes Binky would go to his mom's house, which is how I met him. Now that we got that out of the way, as me and Binky were getting closer, one day he asked me, hey, how old are you? And I was like, oh, I just turned 17. How about you? He told me, oh, I'm 17 too, but my 18th birthday is coming up. After a while, me and him eventually started dating. Then one day, I ran into his cousin who happened to go to my school. The rest of this story is crazy. This boy lied about his age.
Story time of how my parents forced me to marry a 40-year-old man when I was 14, but most people from my country, it is called arranged marriage, and it happened to a lot of girls. My family was poor, but the guy I was marrying had a lot of money and promised to take care of me and my family. He also had a 6-year-old son, but he didn't like me. I had met him once before when my mother introduced him to us. She allowed me to stay with him alone. He was very touchy. He told me I was very beautiful and would spoil me because pretty girls like me deserve pretty things. After he left, I told my parents that I was scared to marry him and that I'll do more housework and I'll take care of my other little sisters. My father yelled at me and told me no. So the next week, I went throughout the whole wedding crying. My mom told me to stop because I was messing up my makeup. After we had got married, a couple months later, he grew very abusive. Story time of how
So I was just getting my nails done, and while I was there was a baby screaming and crying because it was past her bedtime and she didn't want to be in the stroller, and the mother just kept apologizing to everybody in the building, saying, I'm so sorry, she should have been asleep by now, I thought she'd be asleep by now, I'm so sorry. So I had the guy hurry up with my nails so that I can go over there and introduce myself, let her know that I'm a mother of 2 boys, been there, done that, and let me help you. And she let me help her, so I held the baby while she finished getting her nails done. And whenever she was done, she's like, thank you so much, we're getting Christmas pictures done, so if we weren't doing that, getting my nails done wouldn't have even been on my radar, which absolutely. So I was just getting my nails done, and while I was
time when I was in kindergarten, after lunch we always had nap times, and after them we always had to do work. My lazy ass never wanted to do work, so I came up with the idea of pretending like I was sleeping after everyone woke up. The teachers always let the kids sleep in, so it worked out perfectly. So then nap time came and put my plan into action. After everyone woke up, I remained on the floor pretending I was sleeping. After about 2 hours of pretending I was sleeping, I actually fell asleep. The next thing I knew was when I woke up I was in the hospital. I didn't know what happened. I sat up and my mom was sitting by my bed. When she saw me awake, she started crying and called for a doctor. Apparently what happened was one of the kids, probably the freckled bitch in my class, leaned back on her chair and fell backwards and fell with a metal chair on my head, and I didn't wake up, so they called 911. And that bitch put me in a coma. Time when I was in
Story time. So nail salons are finally open in California. I got a pedicure. It was
So when I was little.
So I woke up in the middle of the night from this noise coming from downstairs. It sounded like something was scratching the back door. But when I got downstairs, the noise had stopped. But when I looked at the window facing the woods, there were footprints in the snow. But my aunt and uncle were really strict, and they had this rule that we weren't allowed to go in their room when they were sleeping. So I made sure all the doors were locked, and I decided I would tell them in the morning. The next morning we woke up and it was a really intense blizzard. Such heavy snowfall that we couldn't see the ground. So when I told my aunt and uncle about the footprints, they didn't believe me and told me it was probably a nightmare. The next day I had to leave, and I didn't go back and visit my cousins for a long time. But the next summer, my cousins really wanted me to come for their birthday party. Before visiting them, I looked up whether they had ever found the woman who had escaped from the hospital. And Google said that authorities were still looking for her and it was a high priority case. When I got to their house, I was playing with my cousins. They were about to turn 6 years old, and one of them goes, "Let's go check if she's there." And my cousin runs to the window facing the woods. So I asked my other cousin who she was talking about, and she goes, "Oh, don't worry, that's just her imaginary friend." But I knew that did not sound right. So I woke up in the middle of the night from this noise.
Story time. I was kidnapped by someone that I thought was a friend. So I was in desperate need of a girls trip, so I hit up my 3 friends that were outside of my state, Maggie, Sarah, and Amber. All fake names, obviously. I made plans and arrangements so that I could come visit them. Another friend of mine that knew them offered to drive me down. His name was Max. I was super thankful for this because my family didn't want me to drive there by myself. I made sure they had his and my number before I took off. But the second that I got into the car, I had a really weird gut feeling. My stomach started to turn, but I didn't listen to it. I kept messaging my friends how excited I was to see them the closer I got, but then they just stopped messaging me. They wouldn't answer my calls either, and Max pulled me over to a gas station saying that we're about 30 minutes away from our destination. So I thought. I needed a bathroom break, so I went inside the gas station, but that's when Max took me by the arm and walked in with me. He wouldn't let me leave his side even for a bathroom break, and that's when he took my cell phone away and I knew that I was in trouble. I still didn't say anything out of fear, but after we got back into the car, he gave me some juice and then I passed out. Stay tuned for part 2. Story time.
This is why you should never go scuba diving in a big group. This is a picture of Tom and Eileen Lonergan, and on January 25th, 1998, they had no idea what was about to happen to them. They wanted the chance to scuba dive in the largest coral reef system in the world. So they set sail with 26 other people and went 25 miles away from the coast of Queensland, Australia, which was their original location. Tom and Eileen only thought they'd be going scuba diving for 40 minutes and they'd come back up and then they'd go back to their hotel. So after about 40 minutes, everybody boards the boat and they go back to Queensland. The next day, another group of divers go out to the same location and one of the divers found dive weights at the bottom of the ocean. They didn't think anything of it until they couldn't find Tom and Eileen. It had been 2 full days until anybody even noticed that they were gone. The people in the group with them just assumed they were out doing stuff or seeing Australia. People wanted to check on them to see if they were okay, so they went to the Lonergans' hotel room, and sitting outside of their door was their luggage. And that is when everybody realized they left them behind, because it had been 2 days and their luggage was untouched. Running out of time, but this is why you should never go scuba diving in a big group. This is a picture of Tom and Eileen Lonergan.
So y'all, let me tell you about this conversation I had with one of my friends. I just couldn't believe it. Okay, so when I was 21 and right after I moved out to California, I got my first job.
Story time about how I almost died when I was 4 years old. So my mom was toxic ex-boyfriend story time.
Hi y'all, so I'm gonna be doing a quick story time. So when
my client had cheated on me, but it's okay. It again, no. My client had cheated on me, but it's
part 2 of the time I threw up on my first kiss. So he comes to pick me up, but as soon as I get into his car, he stinks. And the more he talks, like, just filling up the car with his hot ass breath. I opened up the car door. I said, oh shit, I gotta tie my shoe. Trying to breathe. Just trying to get the circulation going again. I start thinking to myself, like, I'm not going out like this. There's no way. No. If he stinks, I'm gonna tell him. Like, I'm a big-hearted person, y'all. I did not have the heart, so I just dealt with it. I finished tying my shoe, and so I'm in the car acting uneasy. And we're about to pull out of my neighborhood. Where we're going, I don't even know. I asked him, he says we're going back to his house. I'm like, please no, please. I hit him with the quick, I love taking showers. That shit is so relaxing. It's beautiful. It's an art. Everybody should love showers. I'm guessing that he did not know that he stank. After I said that, I was expecting him to come up with an excuse, but he just laughs. Nigga, what's funny? I'm about to suffocate to death. Once you stank, you ain't going back from that. I'm not fucking with you no more. I could just not do it no more, y'all. I was like, I was like, you stink. What he does next? Part 2 of the time
This is why you should never leave the table when you're on a blind date. One of my best friends and I worked at the same
reasons why people thought I was a hoe in high school, part 2. So I start talking to Chelsea and I'm like, listen, Jacob is really coming on to me strong. It's very obvious that like he wants to get with me and I don't know if I should because it would upset Barb. And Chelsea was like, bro, like, fuck Barb. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, he wants you. That's not your problem. And I was like, okay, well, if he tries something, I'm not gonna stop him, but I'm definitely not gonna make the first move. So then we're leaving this abandoned church building. I don't even know what it was. And me and him were talking, flirting, whatever. And just to paint an image of like where we were, I don't know if it was like a firehouse or like an abandoned church, but there was like a basement attached to it and it had like spray paint all over the walls, graffiti. It was a cool vibe, but it was like kind of creepy. But anyway, everybody was walking up the stairs, getting ready to go back to the cars. And he grabs my arm and he's like, hold on, wait. And my friend Chelsea like gave me that look like, you better get some, girl. And I was like, what's up? Just chill for 1 second on my page. I'm posting part 3 now. Reasons why people thought I was a hoe in high school, part 2.
I was 11 years old when my mom kicked me out of the house for the first time. It was a school day! The sun wasn't even out! So you know what I did? I took a shit in the front yard. And I smeared it on her house with a leaf! Fuck! And then I took my happy ass on the school bus with a fucking trash bag of my belongings and went to school. And I told all of my friends, naturally. I thought this was the best revenge. I thought this was a normal thing that happened between daughters and mothers. I got sent to the guidance counselor. I was 11.
Part 2 because y'all are impatient and gotta go to sleep. So I didn't hear from him all weekend, but I left my blanket there and I texted him so he wouldn't forget it. And he was like, okay, yeah, I'll drop it off and we can hang out because I haven't seen you. And then he says that he apparently spilt beer all over it, so he had to wash it. And everything was good until my prom. So we went and he was acting extremely weird and super distant. So that's when I kind of knew that something was up. I didn't have a shore house for my prom, but he was like best friends with all the senior girls who went to my school. So of course they invited him and we went. And then I saw all over social media that there were pictures of him with his ex holding hands and hanging all over each other at the beach. So I had work that night and I just so happened to work with his best friend. And I told him about how he was being super distant and how I saw all those pictures all over social media. And he was like, yeah, we never spilled beer on your blanket that night. He was actually with his ex and they did it on the blanket. Moral of the story, don't date the guy who's named a player because it's probably for a reason.